Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. Yes, we have no Obama. We have no Obama today. Stacy.
I guess you're talking about the state of the banana republic. Let's look at some artwork here from Zero Hedge. This is William Bonsai 7, and he's talking about the State of the Union. It's the state of the banana, of course. Some more artwork speaking in front of a cash Congress and world's highest standard of living billboard. As we know, everybody keeps on talking about America as if it's the great hope, that everything is going to recover there and we're all going to be saved, and of course it doesn't recover. Max, well, we're going to move from bananas over onto Apple. Live, Apple numbers are out and it's a blowout. Apple reported their first quarter earnings the very same day that Obama was lying to the American public about the state of the economy. And their revenue was $46.33 billion versus $38.76 billion expected. Earnings per share was $13.87 versus $10.07 expected. iPhone units sold 37.04 million versus the expected 30.2 million.
Well, yes, this is amazing because they have $100 billion in cash. They have more cash than a lot of countries have their total GDP, and over 450 of the S&P 500 have in total market capitalization. But here's the thing, they got rich by outsourcing jobs to China. Apple Computer, if they had those jobs onshored, it would add something like $60 per iPhone to the current price of many hundreds of dollars. It's almost insignificant. But they refuse to do it because they want to build this huge cash hoard for no apparent reason. They don't pay a dividend. They just sit on the cash. So if they're going to just rip people off of their jobs and they're not going to give them the means to buy the products that they themselves manufacture, now most of the sales come outside of the U.S., then you have to give them something. You just can't use the U.S. infrastructure greedily for your own purposes and give back nothing. So the only thing they have to give back, in my opinion, would be shares in the company itself, stock in the company.
In fact, iPhones sold for an average of $660, which was higher than analysts had expected as well. So people are already willing to spend more on it. So if it were $65 more, they're saying it would add costs of 10%.
Yes, a minor adjustment, but if you calculate the new customers that would then be in a position to buy more iPhones, net, it would be accretive. They would actually make money doing this. It would be a way for them to make money. But they're so frickin' stupid, Apple Computer, that they don't seem to think that it makes any difference whether they disenfranchise millions of Americans.
Now, in the State of the Banana Republic speech, Barack Obama also mentioned this new Buffett law that he wants to bring in, that Warren Buffett shouldn't be paying a lot less tax than his secretary. And also on the day before, I guess, it was Mitt Romney released his tax returns from the previous year. And sure enough, he paid 13.9% on his $25 million in income. Now that brings me to this headline further about Apple. Most of Apple's $82 billion cash stockpile is trapped overseas. Now, of course, this is only a few weeks ago, and it was only $82 billion, their cash pile. Now it's $97 billion. But $54 billion of Apple's overall $82 billion in cash is in offshore accounts, and Apple cannot repatriate that money to the States unless it wants to pay a huge 35% corporate tax on it.
Right, it's another stab in the back to Americans by not even paying the tax on this cash hoard and letting the benefits accrue to people outside of the United States.
But also, it is a banana republic, and only certain sectors have huge privilege. Private equity, who extracts the capital, the wealth, hollows out an economy, they get taxed only 13.9% on their income. Apple, which could potentially create enormous wealth in the U.S. economy, is taxed at 35%. And we all know when everybody says, oh, people are just jealous of the wealthy. Well, there were throngs of people throwing themselves at the various Apple shops when Steve Jobs, a multi-billionaire, died. His company is taxed at 35% on their earnings. Mitt Romney is taxed at 13.9%. So there is that element to the Banana Republic.
Right, and of course the term Banana Republic comes from the United Fruit Company, which changed their name to Chiquita after that such huge PR disaster of finding out that they were involved in the overthrow of governments in Latin America and South America to further their ends. And now you've got American oligarchs, American Banana Republic leaders like Barack Obama or the leaders of Apple Computer doing the same thing that these other dictatorships are doing, causing the same kind of economic distress, and they seem to name themselves after fruits for some reason, whether it's a Banana Republic or a frickin' Apple Computer.
Apple said they would return the money to the United States if they were taxed at 9%. So there's a...
But did they threaten the people in Congress like the people like Hank Paulson did when he got the $750 billion TARP bailout, threatening martial law?
No. Now let's turn from the state of the Banana Republic to the state of the stiff upper lip. This is over in the United Kingdom. Sir Mervyn King, no reason to despair. So as reports says Britain is heading back into recession, the governor of the Bank of England urged against despair because all crises come to an end eventually, he says.
He looks pretty miserable, doesn't he?
He should talk like, usually if you're telling people don't despair, you don't look like you're about to top yourself. You try to have a smile and put a clown nose on.
Really, like a Bernanke. He's usually got the clown nose on when he's delivering bad economic numbers. Mervyn King has got that British kind of, I'm in the bag, half blitzed on gin look, which is not fooling anybody. And of course, the UK economy is contracting. Why? Because the debt in the banking sector continues to expand, and nobody's doing anything about that. Mervyn King, wake up!
As we compared Apple to the banana-wielding bankers in America, where the bankers have so much more power over government officials via their debt, that you see this playing out here with Mervyn King. He's also pleading. This is all he has is desperate pleas to the banking sector. The tragedy of the financial crisis is that those who have suffered most have been those who bear no responsibility for it. The legitimacy of a market economy will inevitably be challenged if rewards go disproportionately to a small elite, especially one which benefited from the support of taxpayers. So he then goes on to plead with them, please don't give yourself massive bonuses and rub it in and make our jobs more difficult.
But he has the means to rectify this problem simply by raising interest rates instead of engaging in quantitative easing, which is to lower interest rates. You have it in your ability to right this wrong, Mervyn King. Why are you pretending as though you are powerless? You're sitting on the Bank of England, the primo de primo of central banks, the progenitor of all central banks. If you don't know what to do, then either resign or, in fact, top yourself, as it looks like you want to do.
Max, more importantly, he could just stop buying their debt. He keeps on engaging in quantitative easing. He's like a frigging madman. Why don't you just stop giving them the money, Sir Mervyn?
Stop buying the debt. Stop buying the debt that you yourself issue. Stop it. It's like exactly like that movie Psycho, when Norman Bates staring into the mirror, and he's trying to, attack what turns out to be his mirror reflection of himself dressed up as his mother. This is Mervyn King. He's looking into the mirror, dressed up like a woman, like most British men like to do most of the time, and he's attacking himself. You yourself are the psycho, Mervyn King.
Well, let's look at the state of the actual British citizen. UK family debts up by almost 50% in a year. The typical debt owed by a UK family has soared by 48% since January 2011 as rising inflation has taken its toll on household incomes, according to the latest Aviva Family Finances report. And Max, how is inflation caused?
By printing money and buying your own debt. Mervyn King doing exactly what he's doing.
So Mervyn King, the only hope he gives to them with his glum face is don't despair. One day I'll stop printing money. I can't tell you when.
It's like sphincter economics, basically, because he's trying to hold in the inflation, but he can't seem to do a good job and is leaking out and stinking up the joint.
That's just one step too far.
Perhaps, but it's a good analogy that most people can relate to.
So research by the insurance company found that the typical UK family owes £7,944 in unsecured borrowing on credit cards, loans, overdrafts, and other forms of credit, compared with just £5,360 in January 2011. The figure represents 32% of a typical net annual income and suggests families are falling further into debt as financial pressures grow.
Right, because people who work in these families can't get jobs. Why? Because all the jobs that are not in finance have been squeezed out of the system due to Mervyn King's artificially low interest rates that have rewarded speculators and pushed legitimate jobs out of the way. So this is exactly what you don't want to see in an economy that builds itself as being competitive. There should be a competitiveness in the UK economy where people who want to work and have jobs doing stuff should not be squeezed out by the central bank, which is making it possible for the cancer of speculative bubble economics to grow its way to the point of killing the host. That is to say, the UK economy, which is clearly shrinking. Lance the boil of speculators, Mervyn King, and you will stimulate the economy, unless you yourself are the pus in the boil, which I suspect that you are.
Well, again, perhaps the British population shouldn't despair too much because things could be worse. They could be American. The caging of America. There are now more people under correctional supervision in America, more than 6 million, than were in the Gulag archipelago under Stalin at its height.
Here, American, here you go. Here, little American. American, want a banana? Little monkey. Look, Americans don't care that they're in cages as long as they get cheap access to cable TV and a good rate on a McNugget.
Well, exactly. If they're in a banana republic, many monkeys live behind a cage as well and are fed bananas. The accelerating rate of incarceration over the past few decades is just as startling as the sheer number. It tripled since 1980 to 731 per 100,000. No other country even approaches that. In the past 2 decades, the money that states spend on prisons has risen at 6 times the rate of spending on higher education. Ours is bottom to top a carceral state.
And who do they want, the Republicans, as their presidential nominee? None other than Chief Warden himself, Mitt Romney, of a private equity background, Bain Capital, whose job it is to destroy the manufacturing economy and the real economy in favor of a financialized economy that crowds out all real jobs in favor of speculative bubbles and speculator gambler kings that run the economy. And as a result, the incarceration population keeps going higher and higher. And Americans love to be incarcerated. They hate their freedom. They would prefer to be treated like dogs in a cage and have some warden like Mitt Romney in charge, and that's why they're going to vote for him. All right, Stacy Herbert, don't go. Stay right there. We'll be back right after this. I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. We're back talking about bananas and banana republics. Stacy?
Well, Max, speaking of bananas, in my first headline here in the second half, we have, can a monkey pick a hedge fund? They may match a typical fund of hedge funds. In a research paper from some academics at the Brussels Free University in Belgium and the Geneva School of Business Administration in Switzerland called Assessing the Performance of Funds of Hedge Funds, they studied a broad sample of 1,300 funds from 1994 through 2009 and analyzed just how much value they actually created. Their core finding? When you strip out the fees, just 22% deliver any alpha or risk-adjusted investment gains at all.
Yeah, and none with any consistency. Over time, they're almost all completely worthless. And a fund of funds is particularly worthless because it's a concatenation, it's an aberration, it's an abomination. They're using people's money to invest in other people's money invested in tertiary money invested by some guy in Greenwich, Connecticut who's probably drunk under his desk wishing he were Mervyn King and never even looks at the market. Except for Paul Tudor Jones, they're all worthless.
And nearly half of all fund of hedge fund managers, the academics report, delivered negative after fees alpha when benchmarked against the hedge fund indices. In other words, they couldn't even keep up with the index. So this is a new term, negative alpha.
Negative alpha, otherwise known as losing money. You can just say they lost money. But no, the hedge fund community needs a way to say it that makes it sound like they're intelligent about the way they lose their money. So they say negative alpha. But they are empowered in ways that are quite detrimental to the overall economy. Because in the Greek debt situation, the hedge fund community and their use of naked credit default swaps are forcing political change and austerity on a country using their incredible leverage, because they have $1 trillion in cash, which they leverage up to $50 or $60 trillion, and poor Greek economy is only a couple $100 billion. So these hedge funds gang up, they collude, they talk to each other, again, more illegal activity, to pick on a country like Greece that has no representational government, that has nobody defending the country, and they sell the bonds down to zero, and they force austerity measures on a country with huge assets, and those assets are now falling into the hands of people friendly to the hedge funds.
Well, exactly, and those hedge funds are taking their case to the human rights courts, which is why we should just hand over all of that hedge fund activity to monkeys.
Well, the technology is becoming very sophisticated, and they are introducing technology that allow for people to use brainwaves to manipulate cursors on screens to surf the web using your mind. And I would imagine that monkeys will soon be able to do this, hire lawyers, and defend themselves in court against slander by having hedge fund managers compare themselves to monkeys, when clearly the monkeys are a lot more intelligent.
Well, remember in the first half of the show we were talking about Mervyn King, and he's so angst-ridden about these bankers and their bonuses? Well, here's a possible solution. Strippers can show us bankers' just rewards. Jamie White in the City AM proposes that strippers and bankers, they operate on a similar performance bonus scheme. But here's one of the many differences, he says, between lap dancers and bankers. Whereas Mr. Stringfellow makes his lap dancers pay for the privilege of being put in the way of their bonuses with a house fee of about £100 a night, investment bankers are paid to have the chance of earning bonuses in the millions, with base salaries ranging from roughly £50,000 to £300,000.
Right. It's not even that they're being paid, but they're given a subsidy. If you look at it in terms of the concept of too big to fail banks. The government gives investment banks a subsidy in the form of low interest rates and bailouts so that they can go ahead and do what is no more instrumental in keeping the economy going as the average pole dancer. So the pole dancing model of you've got to give the house some money to eventually rent space to pole dance is exactly what the model should be for investment bankers, because their job at the end of the day is just to seduce suckers into giving them lots of money for a cheap thrill. As we just reported, the hedge fund community does not deliver alpha, that is to say they don't make anybody money. They instead produce negative alpha, which is to say they lose people money, which is exactly what the typical pole dancer does. They get the client all hot and bothered, but they don't actually deliver what the ultimate desire of that client would be. Same thing with an investment banker. They talk a good game, but they deliver nothing. And in fact, they are nothing but subsidy suckers. In Germany, the street prostitutes, they have a kiosk where they put in some money and they rent space to do their job. This is exactly the same on Wall Street. Jamie Dimon should have to go to Wall Street every day, put in $1 million, and exercise his right as a Wall Street prostitute to seduce idiots into JP Morgan stock and all their products. That's exactly the way it should be done.
He and Lloyd should put on their G-strings, man, and do a little dance and see who's better.
I think Jamie's got some nice cheeks. When you compare it to Lloyd Blankfein, who's kind of saggy and out of shape. But Jamie's constantly outrunning the pitchforks and the torches, so he's got nice legs.
Well, investment bankers like lap dancers should have to pay to go to work. If investment banks held auctions in which prospective employees bid for jobs by offering an annual fee, the bank's owners and all of those others who nowadays concern themselves with the issue could be confident that they are not overpaying their staff. Any excess pay would be competed away in the auction.
Right, auction is capitalism. We don't have capitalism. Thanks to the predatory behavior on Wall Street and the City of London, no more Bear Stearns, no more Lehman Brothers. The competition is shrinking. The too big to fail problem is growing. The agency fraud, as Bill Black calls it, is increasing.
Well, between these two headlines, Max, I haven't told you this yet, but I did put out word to the primate community, basically, looking for somebody to audition to be our fund manager. And I've got this video here from Gibbon. He's our new hedge fund manager. He's an ape, of course. He has opposable thumbs, but he does do a good pole dance. You got to admit that.
Yeah, this guy, he's got the chops. He's got what it takes to be a good fund manager because he's decisive. There's an incredible analog between a suicide bomber and a hedge fund manager. They are willing to die for market fundamentalism without thinking about it too much.
Well, I'd like to see Lloyd and Jamie performing next to him and see who could do that better, swinging on those ropes.
Well, clearly the gibbon is endowed in ways that I don't think either of those other two gentlemen are, but that's clearly maybe not great for the hedge fund industry per se, but it could be useful in other contexts.
Speaking of natural endowment, there are certain artists who are naturally endowed with great art and those who steal. Taking the Mickey, Joy Division drummer's anger at Disney t-shirt inspired by Unknown Pleasures album cover. So Joy Division drummer Stephen Morris has hit out at a Disney t-shirt which appears to have been inspired by the band's first album cover. The Waves Mickey Mouse t-shirt is similar to the 1979 album Unknown Pleasures, but uses Mickey's silhouette. So here you can see the images side by side. The one on the left is the Mickey Mouse t-shirt, and the one on the right is Joy Division's album cover. Now, Disney originally said that it was, quote, inspired by the iconic sleeve, but the Disney Store website now contains no reference to the band.
Well, let's introduce a new personality to our rogue gallery of terrorists and kleptocrats. Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, just announced $50 million compensation for the year. Bob Iger is to copyright terrorism what Blank Fine and Diamond are to financial terrorism. And Disney, of course, is the company that every single time Mickey Mouse is due to enter the public domain, they lobby Congress to extend copyright, most famously with Bono,
Sonny Bono.
Bono, yeah, Cher's ex-husband, who got it extended by another 20 years to create what Lawrence Lessig calls perpetual copyright and gives them kleptocratic powers to do exactly this. Say that we know we're violating copyright law, but we don't care because we have the power to tell you to go buzz off. At the same time, we're going to use it to deprive you of your constitutional right of fair use. This is at the nexus of the copyright problem, the SOPA, the PIPA, the ACTA, Bob Iger, copyright terrorist. Disney is a shameless organization that really needs to be broken up as well as these big banks.
So Stephen Morris, the drummer from Joy Division, said, "I was quite angry when I first saw it. No one asked us. They're trading off the band and our album cover, but get away with it by apparently saying the design was inspired by us." So why isn't that the argument for Mega Upload? We were just inspired by Warner Brothers Music or Universal Music.
Or how about the creators of that show, Californication? It's from the title of a Red Hot Chili Peppers song. They simply stole it. They didn't pay them compensation. They said, you know, we're bigger than you. Tough luck.
Well, so it's part of that banana republicanism, however, where a certain class of kleptocrats get all sort of rights, exclusions, exemptions from all laws and tax laws and criminal laws, and the other class have bananas thrown at them behind a cage.
That's right. Those are called Americans.
So further, you mentioned SOPA. 30 years before SOPA, MPAA feared the VCR. So somebody's uncovered some testimony by Jack Valenti, the former MPAA head, the Motion Picture Association of America, and this is him speaking before the House Judiciary Subcommittee in 1982. He said to the gathered Congress people, "I say to you that the VCR is to the American film producer and the American public as the Boston Strangler is to the woman home alone."
Right, Jack Valenti arguing against technology. Of course, the VCR gave birth to the blockbuster franchise of rentals of video, a multi-billion-dollar revenue source for Hollywood, which went into the DVD market, another multi-billion source of revenue, which could enter into the download market. At every step of the way, Hollywood has put their foot down and said, no, we need protection from the government against any competition, and they have reluctantly been dragged through the innovative process to multi-billion-dollar profits going forward. Why anyone listens to these idiots in Los Angeles, I don't understand. Meanwhile, in New York, you've got people like Louis C.K., who put on his concert film online, no DRM, asked for people to just give him money for the show, and he raised over $1 million. No Bob Iger, no Disney, no CAA, no management fee, just artist, public, and beaucoup bucks.
So he used this as an argument that it was just being used by people who were illegally copying material from the television. He said, the loser will be your public because they don't have these expensive machines And that is what I am saying, sir. The public is the loser when creative property is taken, and here is the reason why. The investment of hundreds of millions of dollars each year to produce quality programs to theaters and televisions will surely decline. Exact same words they're using today. And what happened? These expensive machines, VCR players, used to cost $1,000, $1,500. They came down to $50 today.
Yeah, they can't give them away.
It's called capitalism.
Right, and this is the one thing that Hollywood doesn't want to participate in. They want to have, like the big banks on Wall Street, huge government subsidies for an industry that is completely superfluous. You could eliminate Hollywood, eliminate too big to fail banks, and the U.S. economy would be the beneficiary of this. More competition in the creative space, more competition in the financial space.
Well, Max, I've got to go pay our fund manager. He is paid in mangoes, you know.
There's plenty more where that came from, buddy. Keep picking those winners. All right, Stacy Herbert, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Max.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. Send me an email at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Follow me on Twitter, Max Keiser. You can follow Stacy on Twitter, too. Until next time, Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.